his people. How refreshing! How beautiful. As I was thinking about this circumstance, I thought, he was 25 years old when he took the throne. And honestly, the throne, the kingdom, was kind of a mess. His father had not been a very good king in the eyes of God. And as a result, Hezekiah had a lot to do, a lot to think about, and a lot to challenge him. It made me think of another guy that, I don't know if you remember this movie, or even for many of you ever heard of this movie, but it's called Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Jimmy Stewart. It's a great film, and it's by Frank Capra. If you're a fan of It's a Wonderful Life, you'll know that style of movie. And Jimmy Stewart was perfectly picked for this part as a naive politician who's replacing a vacant Senate seat. He's being put up for this position by some people who believe it's going to be easy for them to manipulate him, to get him to do what they want to do. But it doesn't turn out to be so easy, you can imagine, with Jimmy Stewart, who's in most cases of movies standing for sort of that decent American hero. And that's not an exception here. He is brought into the Senate and quickly overwhelmed. He finds out about a project in his own district that's completely corrupt. And he wants to speak out against it, but as he begins to speak out against this project, he is immediately attacked for speaking out and accused of having taken bribes back in his home district. He's discouraged, and he confides to his secretary, I think I'm out of here. She says, I see. Well, when you get home, what are you going to tell the children? Children? I'll tell them the truth. They might as well find it out now than later. Well, I don't think they'll believe you. They're liable to look up at you with hurt faces and say, what did you do? Quit? Didn't you do something about it? Well, what do you expect me to do? Well, your friend, Mr. Abraham Lincoln, had his opponents, and so did every other person who tried to lift his thoughts up off the ground. Odds against him didn't stop those men. They were fools that way. All the good that ever came in this world came from fools with faith like that. You can't quit now. Not you. You have faith in something bigger. You have plain, decent, everyday common rightness. And this country could use some of that. Yeah, so could the whole cockeyed world right now. A lot of it. Emboldened by her encouragement, he goes back for an epic scene of a 24-hour filibuster and dramatically faints at the end of it. I'll let you watch the end of the movie to see how it turns out. You can imagine. Good. Hezekiah goes to Jerusalem, and faces the same challenges, but he faces them in much the same way as a decent man of God. His father had gone so far over to the dark side that his father had even sacrificed his own sons. Hezekiah overturned the worship of the idols and brought the nation of God back to God. He was the king people had been waiting for a long time. In the 3rd verse of the 18th chapter, it says, he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father David had done. This is high praise because his father isn't actually David. His father's Ahaz, who was a terrible king. But they take him all the way back to the hero king, right? The David, the one who had the heart of God. He did what was right, like David used to do in the eyes of the Lord. I have a confession to make. There's a stop sign right over here, and some of you after the service can join me in confessing it as well. Stop sign right over here. It does say stop. It's in the ground, but I have to tell you, at the end of the day, when everybody's gone and I'm ready to go home, I don't always stop there. It seems kind of pointless, Holly, right? It's kind of weird. But we get into habits, don't we, Holly? And so it was just last week when all the families are back that Pastor Andy was in his old habit of not stopping at the stop sign, only to look around and realize that there were parents and kids and all sorts of people around still, wondering who is that blowing past that stop sign. Some of you UCLA basketball fans might remember a coach, John Wooden. He put it this way: the true test of a man's character is what he does when no one is watching. When no one is watching, do you do the right thing? When no one is watching. When you can't get caught or observed, do you do the right thing? It would be all too easy to say, what's the point? Except then we get into habits of not stopping at the stop sign. Or you replace that with anything trivial or meaningful in your life and say, how do I act when no one's watching me? Now, for you who are parents, you have a special challenge because they are always watching you. We had Shane and his Amber and Spurgeon and the kids over yesterday, and Amber is on one side of our backyard, and the kids are in the pool splashing around way on the other side. And Amber says something just not critical, but just an observation about one of her children. And from the pool you hear, "Are you talking about me?" And you forget they can hear everything, they watch everything, they know everything. The question is, how do you behave when no one's watching? Because then you'll be fine when they are, right? You'll be fine when they are. If I behave in the proper way when no one's paying attention. Well, the thing is, friends, Wooden didn't include this because God is always watching. We're never really off the hook. And he's watching with eyes of love. I know some of you grew up with the idea that God was watching with eyes of judgment and lightning bolts were a sign of that. But he's watching with love. He's watching with mercy. He's watching with forgiveness. But he is watching. Hezekiah did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. Whether anyone's watching or not, it's good practice. It's good. It's right. And since we love the Lord who's watching us, don't we want to do what's right in his sight? Hezekiah removed the high places, smashed the sacred stones, and cut down the Asherah poles. Now, these are alien thoughts to us in some ways. We don't know about all these stones and altars on high places. Anybody who was on our Ireland trip, though, we went to one of the mountaintops where a stone was standing that was literally one of these kind of stones. Do you remember that stone, Nancy? When Vahan touched the stone and it cried out, and immediately he was named the king of Ireland. He abdicated immediately. Supposedly, if you touch a stone and it cries out, then you're the new king. And I tried a number of times. That stone was one of those kind of things. If you imagine that as a stone standing there. They were up on the mountaintops. People would go up there. When they had problems, they went up there. It was a CVS for the soul. You just get up there and take care of your sickness, your needs, your problems, your issues, whatever it might be, you would go up there. The kings who had the opportunity to take this land that God had given to them and turned it into a place of God, had neglected to clear the decks. In fact, they themselves continue to use other gods to their ends, forgetting completely the first commandment that Moses had given: no other gods but God. Now, you know, when God gave that command, he was trying to help the people of Israel out. They were out in the wilderness and they were going crazy. I said to the kids in the first day of chapel this week, I said to the kids, we're going to have new rules this year. The kids are in charge. Right. They cheered. You can wear anything you want to, even pajamas. They cheered. Everyone's going to get A+ on all their grades. They cheered. 3 hours for recess, 2 hours for lunch. They cheered. You can do whatever you want to. They cheered. I said to them, would you learn a thing this year? Would you have a good time this year? Would you think your parents are going to let you stay here? No. It sounds fun for 10 minutes to have our own way. It doesn't work out very well. Again and again, it just doesn't work out for us to have other gods. And it's kind of nice when we, from time to time, put our mind to removing them from our lives. I inadvertently had to remove a little idol from my life last week when my sister came down to visit and said, Andy, you have a lot of guitars. Could I take one? Oh, you're laughing. Which of your precious moments, Angela, would you give up? Huh? Yeah. Now I started to think, which one could I give up? I mean, not the one my grandma gave me, not the one Susan gave me, not the one thou shalt have no other gods before me. And I couldn't figure out one of 15 guitars or more to lend my sister. But then again, she lives in Tallahassee. I might never see it again. The weird thing is when I finally convicted myself, picked out a nice one, and gave it to her with a guitar pick, and she drove away, I felt good. I mean, it's going to get played instead of stuck in a closet. But my sister, what could be bad about that? Briefly, I thought, and that leaves a little more room in the closet for another one, but hey, whatever obsesses, messes up our lives. Whatever obsesses, messes up. We have to be so careful that nothing gets in the way. All sorts of things will compete for God. Let none become number one. Let none become number one. Fight, challenge, remove the high places in your lives. Cut down the poles of worship and worship God alone. What a great testimony that it says Isaiah trusted in the Lord. He trusted in the Lord. That would be a wonderful, wonderful epitaph for anyone. She trusted in the Lord. What else is required of us? Really nothing else. I was reading in Facebook a website for Lutheran pastors, and one pastor said, I've been a pastor for 30 years. And I thought, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. He said, the entire time I've been a pastor, the Lutheran denomination has declined in membership. Well, he didn't have to be so specific. The entire time in the past 30 years, Christian churches have declined in membership. I know there's a few mega churches. In the wake of those mega churches are countless small churches that are gone, except, of course, for one in Lantana that's still going, thanks to you. He said, what do we do wrong? What do we do wrong? Was it because we didn't change our worship style, or because we did? Was it because we didn't hold on tight enough to Lutheran identity, or do we let it go too easily? It's because we got involved in too many social justice issues or not enough of them. Too much politics or no politics at all. Too much Bible pounding or not enough. I thought about what a dilemma. It happens in your life too. You think, what is going on here? I've poured into a kid, or I've spent so much energy on a relationship or on a project. I've worked so hard, and the fruit, the results don't seem to be showing. It can be very discouraging, and I wonder how discouraged Hezekiah got. But one thing that probably overcame his discouragement was that he trusted not in what he did, but what God was going to do. That's what we have to trust in. The only mistake I think we can make is not to try. I don't think we'll always get it right. We must trust and we must try. We must try and we must trust. That's faith. That's faithfulness. Hezekiah showed it. He tried. Sadly for him, his son took over and overturned everything. And just in a few generations later, the kingdom of Judah would be completely overtaken by the Babylonians. But he tried. And we remember, he trusted. That's what we want to be remembered for. That's our legacy. Not how well we did, but if we tried and trusted. How many of you care that Dina did not reach the tippy top? I know I don't, because she did everything she could do to get there. And that's all God wants. And he will do amazing things with our efforts. Do not get discouraged of the results. Try and try again. He kept the commands the Lord had given Moses. Once again, these kings are judged as to whether they just keep faithful to the basics. They said a couple of weeks ago we had Vacation Bible School, and I was so surprised when I was talking to the kids, and I said, do you remember that time when Moses came down from the mountain and he had these 2 stone tablets with him? You know, the 10 silence. You know, the 10 silence. The 10 commandments. Now, whether they were shy, weren't listening, distracted, I don't know. But a brief thought came to my mind. Is it possible that the word 10 and commandments aren't put together too clearly for our kids? And as we asked what they were, I was even more aware they would have flunked that test. And so I thought, I can keep talking about this. I'm not judging them. They don't know what they don't know. I can keep talking about this so we can do something about it. So we're going to start saying the 10 Commandments in chapel once a week. Not as a hammer over the kids, see how bad you are breaking these 10 Commandments, but as a guide. Here's the stuff that God has given us to show us. If we live this way, life will be better. Life will be better for us to live this way. But I thought if we use the 10 Commandments out of the King James or something like that, it's going to be a problem. There's words they don't get at all. So channeling my inner Eminem, I am from Detroit, you know. I created the 10 Commandment rap. There's just one God. He alone is holy. Don't worship other things. That's idolatry. Use God's name to praise God only. Always keep each Sunday holy. Love your father and your mother. Do not murder one another. Keep the marriage vows you make. Other things you must not take. Tell the truth, and there's one more. Don't want what belongs to your neighbor. Yeah, it's forced a little bit at the end. I know from experience working here that it'll be pushing the stone up the hill for a couple weeks. And then somewhere in October, they will be nailing these. And I hope remembering them. It's the first step, right? With these come a word of grace. We don't keep them. Jesus gave his life for us. But they're still our guides. They're a blessing. The way forward for us. And Hezekiah kept them. What a wonderful thing to be said about Hezekiah. There was no one like him among all the kings of Judah, either before him or after him. What a wonderful thing to be said. It was his faithfulness, trusting in God, doing the right thing when no one was looking.